Okay. All right, the recording has begun. Welcome again, everybody, to Lounge 25. This is meant to be a more casual conversational version of our meetings. So this is not like a typical LD meeting where you're being presented to, and then there's a little chat going on. This is really meant to be interactive, conversational, especially after the presentation is done. So I hope you're prepared for that, and I hope that the topic tonight sparks questions. I will tease this again at the end. But just so you know, our upcoming events on March 18th is our next big legislative district meeting. So that's March 18th. It's 1 week from tonight. That's Thursday from 6:30 to 8. And then the following Thursday night, many of you know Deidre Aboud, who ran for the U.S. Senate in the primary in 2018, and then was our candidate for the county, Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, District 2 Democratic candidate last cycle. And so she and her counterpart, Tara Ajay, who is the owner of Love Glasses Revolution, and also her chief cheerleader during the Senate race. She is going to be coming as well. And the topic is going to be having difficult conversations and just the importance of creating spaces that are safe to have difficult conversations and for voices to be heard that maybe sometimes are not. So look for more information on the registration link on that. But that's what's coming up. And with that, I'm now going to introduce Krista Potenza. Did I get it? Okay. And she along with others from Voter Choice Arizona are going to walk us through the world of ranked choice voting.
So, okay, wait, I thought John was gonna, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But first,
Thank
John
you.
Austin will introduce us, yes.
So, hi, my name is John. I'm a volunteer with Voter Choice Arizona. I kind of was the glue that brought all this together. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Krista formally. I want to thank Ian and the LD25 Democrats for having us this evening. Thank you very much for your time. We, of course, are going to be speaking to you about ranked choice voting. Voter Choice Arizona, just briefly, is an all-volunteer grassroots nonprofit that's working to bring this pro-voter, non-partisan electoral reform called ranked choice voting, which Krista will get further into. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce our speaker today. Her name is Krista Potenza. She's studying psychology, justice studies, and pre-medicine at the Barrett Honors College at ASU with the goal of facilitating a justice-informed approach to treating mental health as an inextricable aspect of physical health. She served as the managing field organizer for Dr. Tipperney's 2020 congressional bid in Congressional District 6. She's the newly appointed precinct committee person for LD26 Dems, as well as being a co-lead for the Voter Choice Arizona Speakers Group. So without further ado, I'm going to toss the presentation to Krista. Ian addressed the questions in the chat, and we're going to present for probably about 15 minutes approximately. We'll have the rest of the time to do Q&A. We're here to answer any and all of your questions, and then I personally have a few organizational asks after we're done. So take it away, Krista.
Thank you so much, John. All right. So as you heard, we're Voter Choice Arizona. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing ranked choice voting here to Arizona. So let me get my presentation up and going. So whether or not you've heard of what ranked choice voting is before, I'm here to kind of let you know and clarify any questions that you might have at the end. So we're here because I think most of us could agree that our current election system doesn't benefit all of us, and some might even say that it's broken, and we have the opportunity to fix it. So I'll tell you how. So what is the problem? A significant problem is the spoiler effect. A really good example of this, a textbook example, was in the 2000 presidential race in Florida. You had 3 major candidates and no one ended up securing a majority, meaning more than half. So The separation between the frontrunners, Gore and Bush, was only 537 votes. And what we know from exit polling is that if Nader had not actually been in the race, many of those voters would have voted for Gore instead, easily enough to make that 537 vote difference and ultimately change the landscape of the 2000 presidency. So then Nader got called a spoiler because his views were more similar to Gore's, and George Bush ended up winning the race. Another example of this was in the 2016 presidential election in Arizona, where Donald Trump did not actually secure a majority. And you can see almost 150,000 votes were just wasted because people can't reflect their second choices. And we had a non-majority winner. So the spoiler effect also ends up reducing just the choices that we have. In the Arizona 2018 Senate election, you had Sinema and McSally in a really tight race. And in this case, the Green Party candidate actually dropped out of the race in the last week because she didn't want to cause a spoiler effect. So imagine then how many other candidates don't end up even running because they're worried about the same thing. Then in our current system, more candidates ends up making the spoiler effect worse. In general elections, we have just 2 major party candidates, but in primary races, we often have 3+ candidates running for a single nomination. So in 2016, Andy Biggs ended up winning the Republican primary for his district with less than 30% of the vote. And the margin, as you can see, was 240 to 224. That's only 16 votes, meaning the majority of Republican voters actually chose somebody else. Why are runoff elections not the answer? We have runoff elections, but what ends up happening is that they don't actually secure or tell us the true majority. So what happened in the 2018 mayoral election was that we had these 4 candidates, but then because none of them ended up securing a clear majority, during the runoff, less than half as many people actually showed up. And that was as much as more than $1 million later. So it cost the taxpayers a ton, and it really did not do much. So what is the solution for this then? Ranked choice voting. So what does that look like? I know it might sound a little scary, but it's really a simple change to the ballot. Rather than just selecting a single candidate, you can rank your candidates from favorite to least favorite. If your favorite candidate doesn't win, then your vote will automatically transfer to your next choice, your backup choice. So there can be more than just 3 candidates. You can also write in candidates, and you don't have to rank all the candidates if there's someone you particularly dislike. So how does this actually work? Bear with me here. So here's an example of a race with 4 candidates. With our normal ballot, as it stands right now, that light orange, or that dark orange, my apologies, would have won with 40% of the vote, a non-majority, even though 60% of people actually voted for other candidates. So under ranked choice voting then, what we would do is that light orange candidate would be eliminated because they have the least amount of votes. So we eliminated them, and you can see that then those voters in the next round of instant runoff preferred the dark orange candidate, their second choice. But we still don't actually have a majority in this round. So then we eliminate the next lowest candidate, light purple. And now you can see then that the light purple voters tended to prefer dark purple. So then we have a clear majority established, and there are no spoilers. This is the same result you would ideally get with a runoff election as we have them, but without that second wave of expensive campaigning and vote counting and the much poorer turnout. So then what are the benefits of ranked choice voting? How does this benefit us? How does this help you? So no more lesser of 2 evils. That's a phrase I'm sure we all got very tired of hearing in the last few elections. You don't have to pick between the person that you like, that you identify with, and the person that you think actually has a chance of winning. You can safely vote for the person who's actually your favorite without worrying about throwing away your vote or throwing an election a way you don't want it to go. Because if your favorite doesn't win, you've reflected backup choices. A second benefit is no more winning with just 30 or 40 some percent of the vote. Sometimes the winner will get more than 50% of votes in first choice votes in that first round. And in that case, the person would just win in the first round, just like with what we have today. But if not, then they will need to have enough second, third, and fourth place votes to secure an actual majority. So then that means a candidate who's disliked by a majority can't actually win. How great would that be? Then, because there's no risk of this vote splitting or the spoiler effect, voters get more choices. More candidates are likely to run, even if they think they might not get all the way to the finish line, because when a candidate has ideas that are appealing, people can express their support without being afraid that they're wasting or throwing away their vote. Yet more, campaigns become more positive. This disincentivizes negative campaigning. When you have more than 2 candidates in a race, it is unlikely that anyone will get a majority in the first round. So that means that any candidate will need second, third, and fourth place votes to secure a majority, so people will have to prefer them over other candidates. So rather than mudslinging against other candidates, that ends up looking bad on you. Instead, you have to incentivize your actual platform, highlight the things you agree with so that you can get those other voters. We saw this in Maine a little bit, actually. In the Senate race that they had, the independent candidate Lisa Savage encouraged her supporters to rank the Democrats second so that there was harmony. They actually got along instead of having to compete with each other. And it increases voter turnout. We have data for this. A 2016 study of 79 elections across 26 different US cities found that in elections where ranked choice voting was implemented, there was a 10-point higher rate of voter turnout. So when the ballot is not a lesser of 2 evils, voting is more exciting, it's pleasant. You see people you identify with and you want to get out and vote. So this is already being implemented. This is already used in more than half of US states in some capacity. In 2016, Maine became history to be the first state to pass this ballot initiative, and they implemented it statewide. In 2018 and 2020, they used it. New York City actually in 2019 also passed an initiative, making it the largest US population to be using it. So it can be implemented on a pretty large scale. In 2020, 5 other municipalities adopted ranked choice voting, and Alaska also joined Maine with another ballot initiative. So this also isn't just in the US. A really interesting fact is that Ireland has used this for decades, and Australia has used it in their state and local elections for the most part for over 100 years. This is a very established practice. So do people actually want this? It seems that they do. A recent poll from the Center for the Future of Arizona found that 3 in 5 Arizonans favor moving to ranked choice voting, with support reflected across the state, as you can see here. So that brings me back to who we are. We were formed in 2020 after seeing the success in Maine, and we thought it's the right time to bring this reform to Arizona. So our goals are to build our organization first and then move for legislation once we have the necessary support. So our goals for this year are to educate people like I'm doing here right now. So thank you for being here. And we need to grow our people, our volunteers, our support, our monetary support, and our endorsements. So to that end, you can see just in the short time we've been around, we've actually made a lot of progress. We have a lot of strong growth. So we would love for you to be part of that. So how can you help make that little chart go up? So we have a lot of opportunities to volunteer, from recruiting people through outreach events, onboarding other volunteers, data entry, policy research, just all this really interesting stuff. But most importantly, if you can't do that, if that's a little overwhelming, just stay in touch with us. George is going to be putting our sign-up sheet, our contact sign-up sheet in the chat. So make sure that we can be in touch with you folks, and volunteer or donate if you can spare the time or the money. We would really appreciate it. And if you're interested, again, in making this a reality in our state, please, staying in touch is one of the most important parts. And Also, let us know if there's anyone else we should be talking to, any other organizations. Come to our next meeting if you can, even if you can't volunteer, just come check it out, see what we're up to. And word of mouth really helps us. So tell your friends and family about us. And that's all I have. So we'll be putting plenty of stuff in the chat. We'll be putting our website in the chat and I think info about our next monthly meeting. So yeah, thank you so much. Ready for questions.
All right. Thank you for that. That was awesome. And I had a question, and then I think I had a second one, but I typed one in the chat like I was supposed to. So I'll read that one first. So for presidential primaries for the state, I've noticed a few states that have adopted that in 2020. Where would the decision to use ranked choice voting be made? Is that a state by state thing, or is that something that the party would decide to do?
So that since this isn't affiliated with any one party, then I think this would be like a legislative decision. Like George said in the chat, there's actually legislation in Arizona right now about this. So I'll let someone who knows a little more about that address that maybe.
That would be John, if you if he's on.
To my knowledge, that would be a legislative endeavor.
Okay.
As Krista mentioned, the Republicans had a bill in front of the legislature that didn't really go that far, that was going to propose to implement ranked choice voting in the 2024 presidential primary. So to extrapolate that across to the Democrats, I would assume it would be the same process.
Okay, and then Peter asked, is it costly to implement ranked choice voting, and would it require new vote tabulation equipment, or can our existing systems adapt fairly easily?
So how I can answer that is I know that the transition in Maine was actually fairly easy and cost effective. In Maine, when they first administered it in 2018, the logistics and costs ended up incurring only about $102,000. So it was it was $1.4 million less than expected to actually cost. And the election ran with no significant problems, and they reported final results in 5 business days. So we could use the same equipment, probably. I mean, as long as it's safe equipment, yeah, there's no reason not to.
Or if the vendors of the existing equipment can, yeah. Because I know, I happen to know because I've had to use the data for some things that there are in Arizona. There's a total of 4 different systems being used in different counties around by different recording offices. So yeah, probably just from vendor to vendor would be different.
To my knowledge, most of the major vendors have ranked choice voting software for those systems. And if they don't, there's a nonprofit called the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center that has a free open source software called the Universal Tabulator that can be used at no cost, and it's open source, and it's been tested and verified.
Very cool.
And in terms of other costs, aside, basically the big costs are the voting equipment, as the question stipulated, but then also there would be probably some costs for voter education. That would probably be the next largest cost, and we don't have estimates at this time about what that cost would be.
Okay, and then there's another question. Let's see, what is the time between rank 1 and 2 and 3, etc.? So I'm gonna guess that means like how much time does it take to go through rank 1, and then okay, we need to pull rank 2 and that sort of.
Yeah, no, totally fair. So like I said, Maine was actually able to get their results within 5 business days. So it's instant runoff. It's as it's being counted, then and like we said, it would all be open. Well, ideally, it would be open source and it'd be transparent. So you'd see like instantly the lowest candidate would be eliminated, and it would go on to the next round. So it shouldn't take any longer than counting regular votes.
Is there any data out there, or whether it's Maine or another, a smaller election like a municipality or something, where they've looked at sort of the logistics of shifting voters? Voter education is always such a hurdle when it comes to like down ballot voting. I still don't know how to tell people that those races are as important as they are, for example. But it seemed like changing from I think it was drawing the line to filling in a bubble, that seemed to go okay this time around. So it's possible with enough money in education. I just wonder if there's costs or any other surprises that Maine ran into or anything like that.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I can actually even put in the chat here this little video where, here, let me find it. I lost it. I have a little video about, I think the governor of Maine, it was talking about how it went, how it was implemented, and how few problems they ran into. So let me see, let me get that out.
So while Krista looks for that, Utah has been kind of on the forefront behind Maine in terms of moving forward with ranked choice voting. They just recently passed in their legislature implementing or giving cities the ability to use ranked choice voting if they choose to. They had a pilot program, and then that went well, and they have implemented it for municipalities. They had another bill to implement it statewide for state elections, but that didn't pass this year. They had an estimate of about $500,000 approximately for voter education. So give or take a couple $100,000. I think we're a little bit bigger in terms of population than Utah, but that gives you an estimate.
Okay, and there's the link, Krista, that you were mentioning. So if anybody's interested, grab that from the chat, and actually we can send out a follow-up email with that link as well, if you miss it in the chat. We're saving the chat and we're recording the meeting, so we'll be in good shape as far as that goes. Other questions? I'm looking at Darren, and I'm hoping, like, I almost willed your mic to turn on so that you could talk. you have such good questions usually.
Yeah, I was wondering, I've been looking at this for a while, and one of the interesting things about voting systems in general is where they can be gained. And ranked choice voting does away with several of them, but it's not completely immune to that. And I'm wondering if you would speak to some of the ways that people can lessen the benefits or otherwise game the system, be it like legislators or voters themselves.
So you mean how people, like politicians, might scam the system with ranked choice voting in place?
Yeah, I mean, as an example, I was speaking with a friend of mine from the UK, where they've used ranked choice voting for local council elections for some time. And they had decent sized districts, so you would have multiple, like maybe 5 people in the council. And they got fairly good representation using ranked choice voting, but then they redistrict and made smaller districts, which sounds like it might be good because you get more local, except that now you're voting for 1 or 2 council people, and that effectively removed some of the minority positions from having representation. Whereas in a larger district where you would elect 5 people, some of the minority views were able to hold 1 of those 5 seats, and now they're eliminated, essentially. That's one example of something that that was probably a horrible, cynical maneuver on some politicos' part, but they look and look until they find something. And I'm wondering if you have considered some of those, and are there ways around those issues? And I'm sorry if this is throwing this is a hard question, so I apologize in advance. I'm a fan of ranked choice voting. I don't mean to be the stickler. So
No, I completely respect that question because, okay, so like just to clarify, so the concern is that if ranked choice voting were implemented, then districts might change shape to benefit like certain like already in power viewpoints kind of thing. Is that like, okay. So if the concern is like predatory, like gerrymandering type practices, then ranked choice voting aims for transparent reform in all regards. So I don't really know how we could. So, you know what, I'm gonna pass this to Ben.
I can speak a little to this. One thing is that first of all, it's obviously it's better than the system that we have now, right? It's just a pure improvement over the system that we have now in terms of voting tactically, right? It just solves a bunch of problems with voting tactically. And then I know what you're talking about as well with having the multiple winners. And it's not Voter Choice Arizona's position at this time that we make any changes to, how many people are coming out of how many people are winning each election, right? Or changing the size of districts or how many winners or anything. That's definitely something that the legislature could do potentially, but right now, apart from our state representatives, which are 2 per district, we don't have very many multiple winner districts already in the state. It's mostly just single winner districts. So there's a limit to how much they could actually restrict that because it's already so many single winner districts in that case. And in terms of tactical voting in general, there are still ways that you can game ranked choice voting, but they're a lot more difficult to do, obviously, than our current system. And some of them would require, like, you would need to really know how other people were going to vote, like have really good polling, which based on our last election, I don't know if it's possible, but you'd have to have really, really good information about what other voters were doing in order for you to be able to, get a better result by doing anything other than voting honestly.
All right, thank you. So there's another question in the chat, which is, actually there's a couple of them. So first, well, Peter started, if Andy Biggs won with less than 30% of the vote, how does he stand as far as ranked choice voting goes? And the broader question is, where is the resistance and what does it look like to ranked choice voting? Is it more of a partisan thing? Is it, who is in favor? Who seems to be more willing to explore it? That kind of thing.
So Republican members of our current legislature actually did try to bring this forth, but that's not to say it doesn't also have just as much Democratic support right now. Like we've talked to Democrats personally as well, like Salmon and Mendez. So I don't know about Biggs' view in particular, but the short answer to where the resistance is politicians in entrenched positions of power at either side of the spectrum wouldn't benefit. Like, this gives diversity to the candidates. This enfranchises the voters. So it doesn't put any one party in more power, and it doesn't necessarily take, power away from anyone either. It just gives power to the voters.
I'll also add that, like political consultants aren't necessarily in favor of this just because they're used to doing elections the way they're used to doing it. Some election officials are a little bit hostile to it because it's a change. It would require remaking the ballot and things like that. To touch upon another person's question in terms of the hand count, if it did go to a hand count, it would take a little bit longer just because of the sorting that would be required to do a hand counted ranked choice voting instant runoff. I don't have an estimate of how much longer that would take, but there would be an additional amount of time for that. Does research show that it supports either party? No, this is a nonpartisan. It's a pretty inert, neutral reform. Now, that's not to say that if a party or candidate had a pre-existing advantage that it nullifies that advantage. It's just inert. So, I live down in Tucson. I believe I'm Congressional District 3. Raul Grijalva is my congressman. He has a sizable Democratic registration advantage. If we implemented ranked choice voting, that wouldn't be eliminated. But it does not confer a bias or a benefit to anyone. It's a neutral reform. And then somebody else had a question that I think we skipped over. If somebody donates money to Voter Choice Arizona, where does that go? Right now, we're in a public education and recruitment phase. So we're doing public education like we're doing right now. We're trying to find the choir so we can preach to them, as I like to say, looking for volunteers. And money right now is going towards basically technological investments in terms of calling and text banking. Because of COVID, our live outreach has been inhibited. So that way of reaching out to people has been hampered. So we're going more technological. We need to invest in that. And then also into polling to get a baseline, some baseline polling data we got for, essentially this other group did some polling that was very beneficial, but we're going to be investing in our own polling to see where we go forward from here. So that's essentially where your money would be going.
All right, great.
A
Questions?
quick interjection, that friend of mine from the UK participated as a volunteer in hand counting ranked choice ballots, and he says it was really no more work than first past the post. So
Good.
There was a Radio Lab 1-hour podcast a couple years ago where they spent a good chunk. It was about ranked choice voting, but they spent a good chunk talking about an election in Ireland. And it was they actually like made it an event and like called it almost like a sports event. So it's interesting the way just different cultures and societies view it. And so thank you, Darren, for that input. I wasn't aware of that, but I just wanted to share that.
Cool. So you mentioned that there was a bill in the legislature this session. Did it end up just not getting a committee hearing, or where has it officially died on the vine somewhere?
Yeah, essentially there were 3 bills. One was from Tim Dunn. He's a Republican in Yuma. That was the one for implementing ranked choice voting in the Republican primary in 2024. That got a hearing, but that died on the vine. Republican Walt Blackman had a bill to allow for ranked choice voting in municipalities and cities. To my knowledge, that never got a hearing. And then I believe Senator Mendez in the Senate had a bill to make sure, basically make sure to touch upon a previous question, to make sure all voting equipment had the capability to do ranked choice voting. And to my knowledge, that hasn't received a hearing either and has not gone anywhere.
Okay. And at this point, unless it's a striker, I don't think it can. So yeah. All right. So planning for 2022. Got it. that's probably where some other of our donations tonight will go towards.
In the link I just put in the chat there, you can, it's a link to Fair Vote, and under Arizona, you can see those bills. And if you click on the little link, it'll show you their status right now.
Awesome. Great, that's a cool website. All right. Other questions? No? Okay, so I'll give you another couple of minutes to think about questions, but in the meantime, just to make sure everybody got it, what are all the different ways that we can support your work?
So we basically asked for people donations, endorsements. I already talked to Ian. Doesn't
Yep.
sound like you can get your endorsement. So people and donations. I'll put the volunteer link in the chat. I'll go ahead and as well put a donation link in the chat. And then the other thing is, just kind of getting the word out grassroots wise in terms of your own interpersonal networks. And if there are people or organizations, as Krista said, that you think we should talk to, please let us know. We did a presentation in early February. And when I asked that question, somebody said, you need to talk to Ian Hamp and LD25, and ta-da, here we are. So that's how we grow grassroots. So we appreciate any and all support you can give us.
Apologize. I thought you were asking the group to recap for you, not me. My apologies. Yes, yes, what John said.
That's okay, fantastic. Yeah, and I think you already, the links were dropped earlier, but yeah, if you can drop them again so that people can sign up or donate. And then I was going to ask something. Oh, I was just going to say that, so that's how you got pointed in my direction, John, but I got pointed in your direction. You just reached out first because of your presentation to Civic Engagement Beyond Voting, which I was leading a couple of weeks ago when you presented. So yeah, that's what got me interested in bringing this to LD25's attention.
Well, thank you so much for letting me speak and having us here. I really appreciate it. We all do.
Thank you, and congratulations on your PC hood.
Thank you. I'm nervous. I have to talk to my neighbors. Oh God.
Right. Yeah. Get to know. So the good news is, like, so Darren Chandler is here. I wouldn't have known him without being a PC. He's down the street from me. Some of the better friends I have in life these days are neighbors that I just knocked on the door of when I started this 3 years ago. So besides all the political benefits, there's certainly some very selfish personal benefits as well in the relationships that you make.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a PC because Ian is me too.
Peter Cullen, PC the PC.
Yeah. All right. Well, if that's it, then thank you again for coming this evening. And once again, I will see you hopefully in 1 week for the LD25 meeting. We'll send the email on that tomorrow to everybody. And then 2 weeks from tonight is how to have difficult conversations and open spaces for different voices to be heard, hosted by Deidre Aboud and Tara Ijai. So that's going to be a great evening, and we'll send the registration info on that out tomorrow as well. So look for that email, and otherwise, thank you once again, Voter Choice Arizona, for attending this evening. Deidre is in fact awesome, Joanne, you are correct. My dog is barking, so that's probably another good reason for me to wrap up tonight, but thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks, Jana. Good to see you. Thanks to everybody, and we'll see you hopefully all in 1 week, if not sooner. Take care.
Bye, thanks.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.